Linda. She's our farm manager. And it's Hillary, our program, our volunteer coordinator.
Yes.
And so this is our Jackson site. Here at our Jackson site, we try to do a lot of our programming, so we have a lot of our classes. This is our garden side. That's our farm side. Over there, so today's class is about composting and compost basics, and this is a part of our beginner rancher and farmer development series. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and go through a wide range of topics. A wide range of things around composting. If y'all have any questions about anything, feel free to jump in. We want this to be as interactive and conversational as possible. It can be very lectury, which is okay with us, but yeah, we want to answer any of your questions. Thank y'all for coming out today. Done with culture, it was a way for us to save money. So the raised bed, the in-ground bed, the raised beds, we filled all of them. Well, so the in-ground beds right here, over here, we dug out the contaminated soil, filled it up to ground level with wood chips, put compost on top of that, and that's how we build our roads. We just add compost every season or every year as needed to get our roads back up to the level we want them to. With the raised beds, we did the same thing. We filled it up, leaving about 6 to 8 inches on the top open for compost, but everything underneath that is wood chips. And the same thing, it breaks down over time, so you have to add to it. But it's a very cost-efficient way to fill up beds because that stuff breaks down into very rich soil. You can see it like right underneath your feet right here. Like Linda was saying, we do this at least once a year. We try to get a load of mulch in here to cover everything up, and as you can see, it's breaking down into nice soil underneath there.
Yeah, and even if you're not planting in the soil, this is capturing carbon too. So this is going to help just the world in general, just having a place to put these in the yard.
Yeah, it also helps with absorbing water and stuff too. It's a great way to sort of level up places where you're having standing water. It's a really good way to build up the land so you're not passing that water. A couple things about the ground. So we mentioned leaves and wood chips. Some things that I've found in my experience is that I try to avoid a lot of leaves. Not saying you shouldn't use leaves, but I try to avoid using a lot of leaves at one time because leaves can tend to stick together and match together and they become these blocks, and those blocks can become anaerobic. So I really like having pieces like the wood chips in there. I used to hate wood chips when I first started doing composting because I was like, oh, I gotta screen all of this wood out of my compost before I use it. But it's actually super beneficial because it's hard and it's a carbon source that breaks down slowly, and it helps keep the soil, the compost airy. So if you're adding in leaves, I would definitely recommend adding in some wood chips and branches and things like that to help break those leaves up so you don't have these anaerobic pockets.
Yeah, that's actually the next point on the list is oxygen. Compost is a living colony of organisms. You're basically raising microorganisms.
Yeah.
So they need all the things that organisms need: oxygen, moisture, the right temperature. They like to heat up things. So yeah, our compost gets up to about 150 sometimes.
That's kind of where it went.
Professional compost can get up to like 300.
Yeah, I think the highest I've seen out is like 200, which is pretty good for a compost pile.
Yeah.
So 203.
203. Yeah, that's about the highest I've seen at it. You can buy a compost thermometer from like Amazon or something. They range between like $25 to $100. We definitely don't use the $100 one, but we just have I think ours was $30 on Amazon. And it's just a long thermometer. We'll show you ours when we go back there.
And there are ways to do anaerobic compost. I haven't personally done them because it's kind of more of a niche hobby thing than something that will help the farm. So the recommended ratio for the carbons are so important is 30 to 1 for the and this is by weeks. So
ideally we would be like closer to 3 to 1. That would be like our ideal range for what we can actually collect around here, but yeah, it's usually
and that's our stuff still gets very hot and it makes beautiful plants. So that's like the scientific best practice, but it's not necessarily realistic for a home compost system year-round.
Yeah, and I would say that when you stay closer to that 50-50 range, it less browns in there, you have to add in more because you have less browns, you need to add in more oxygen to make sure that those nitrogen are getting broken down properly, and you're not getting those anaerobic spots in there.
Yeah, the compost, even while it's working, should smell pretty good, not like rotting. So that's like the best indicator of whether or not you need to add more carbon. If it smells, you either need to flip it and add more carbon or both. Yeah, and for moisture, you don't want it to be completely soaked, but you want it to not squeeze out extra water when you squeeze it, but for it to be wet.
Yeah, I would say kind of like what this ground kind of looks like, maybe even a little less than this. You just want it to be sort of damp, kind of like you would want your houseplant soil, where it's not very wet, but it's wet enough to where you stick your finger in there and some soil slips through. But like Linda said, you definitely don't want it to be where you're squeezing it and water dripping out. That is going to be way too wet. It's going to create those same anaerobic conditions that we're trying to fight.
Yeah, because the decomposition really creates a lot of moisture on its own. So unless we have a really hot, dry summer, you probably won't have to water it. And we also cover ours with compost or cardboard in the summer to just kind of keep the moisture in, keep the soil shaded. So
help protect some of that light. If you're using things like grasses and if you're using a lot of yard clippings and things like that for your greens, you might need to be watering it here and there. But if you're using food scraps, most likely you don't need to water it. The juices and stuff from your food scraps are likely enough water for it. But always good to check.
So there's things that we don't want to put in a compost pile. Unfortunately, meat and oil, anything cooked, except for grains are fine, as long as there's no seasoning on them. And you can compost some of these things, but generally not in a backyard, especially in a city, or actually anywhere outside.
Yeah. Unless it's a commercial compost operation, I wouldn't try it. Meats, oils, fats, dairies, I would stay away from all that stuff. Again, it can be composted at a commercial level, and that's why, let's say you buy some compost from Schmelly's, you'll see bones and things in there. That's because Nico's operation can actually get hot enough to process that stuff and make sure that no pathogens or bacteria or anything like that.
You don't want to attract the wrong kinds of microbes, but also pests. And if it's wrong, it'll just be very small. I feel like your neighbors would probably.
A couple of other things that you try to avoid but aren't necessarily horrible are your onion flesh. So you can use the peel from onions; those are okay, but you really don't want to use the flesh from onions. You want to try to avoid citrus, so the flesh and the peel from citrus. They will compost. The citrus peels will compost, but it will take a lot longer. And if you throw some in there, you'll see it. They will be one of the last things to break down. Everything else will be fine, and you'll have a crusty orange peel sitting there. And it's because those are naturally antimicrobial, so it's harder for the stuff to break that down. So it's okay if you get it in your compost, but it's something that you want to try to avoid. A lot of our greens come from, our nitrogen comes from the community. So we do compost pickup or drop-offs on Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. So people just bring us their stuff, and a lot of times there's all types of things in it: breads, rice, lots and lots of citrus, lots of citrus. And a lot of times I will pick a lot of that citrus out and try to bring it somewhere else on the farm or into one of our other lots to spread it out, because too much of it is it's killing the life that you're trying to farm.
Some other things, we do compost newspaper, but you want to make sure that the ink is not toxic. They'll usually say in the paper. Yes, no glassy papers or cardboard boxes, anything with wax.
We do cardboard boxes, but it's the same thing where, this is not ink. We're taking all of the tape and stickers and things like that off of there. And if we have to, we'll strip a whole outside off.
And we try to avoid using anything that was on the street level, just because we don't know what's been in there, and we don't want to necessarily release that any antifreeze or, you know, slightly decomposing Mardi Gras beads or whatever.
Yeah. So beware picking up trash bags off to the side of the road after people are doing, you know, their yard work and stuff. Beware, because you don't know if that came from the side of the, you know, right onto their driveway or if it came from their yard. So, and then also, you don't always know who's in their yard. So.
That's very true. Yeah, and that brings me to my next point. You do not want to compost dog or cat. That's not really. Or human waste. There is a way to do. Again, there is a way to do it. But for a backyard urban setting, not super appropriate.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to do these things, like you say. It's very difficult in the urban environment, and there are actually lots of places, probably not New Orleans because we're behind the times on things, but lots of places have very strict regulations on those specific things. Like, if you wanted to do a composting toilet, allow that. You can't even do that without special permitting in the city. So just be very aware of that. And the reason why we can't do the animal waste is because of, like we were saying, with the processing plants and things like that. They just, because they're carnivores, they have things in their waste that we can't guarantee we will break down with the temperatures of our compost.
Oh, and on that note, mentioning horse manure. So a lot of horses are given dewormers and other antiparasitics regularly. So we want to make sure that you contact people that you're getting horse manure from. Because there are places you can go pick it up. Like, we wouldn't pick up from the fairgrounds because they give all the horses dewormer and antibiotics. It just won't decompose. And you also want to be aware there's a lot of seeds in there, grass seeds, so it might add some.
Yeah, then you're just spreading it all over your farm. Now you have a bunch of weeds everywhere.
If you can get it hot enough, it will kill the seeds, but it can be difficult to do that. Ours got up to 150 degrees. We still have some very hardy weeds popping here. All right, we get to our 3-bin system.
And that's what we use to check all of our things. So one way that you know the compost is done is if you flip it and it's not heating up anymore. You can also tell by how it looks. We'll have some things for y'all to look at, some examples for y'all to look at. But this is our 3-bin system. So it's fairly simple. On the handouts that we gave out, it has a useful links page on it. It has a QR code to a video that we made on exactly how we made this and how it all works, in case you want to reference that later on. But it's fairly simple. So as you see, we just built it out of pallets. We did this because pallets are readily available. They're free. There's so many places you can go get them for free. One of my favorite places to go is the Pepper Palace down on Chops. It's right by the Walmart and the police station over there, like kind of in that weird bin right there. You can go there and you can pick up pallets there pretty much any day of the week. And then we just got a few brackets from the store and some screws. And then the reason why we did that is because, yes, we know this wood is going to break down over time, but it's very, very easy to replace, and we're going to show you all that as well. But the way the system works is we have one bin over here, which is our input pile, and then we'll just keep adding into that pile until it gets larger, so large that we can't really manage it anymore, which is about the top of these pallets. So we want it to be manageable for us to move, take it out and flip it. So we'll get it up to about there, and then that pile will then go into digesting mode. While it's digesting, we'll go ahead and start another pile. If it's, that's how it kind of works now. When we first started it, when there was only just one pile, we would literally just have one pile that was doing one thing at a time, and then we would move them over. But as capacity picked up, we kind of had to expand on how to do it. So right now, it's got rid of the pile. Digesting pile, so nothing will be getting added into this pile. You can see it's still looking very raw, like fresh compost. This pile is just a digesting pile. So over time, this together a little too much, we will add in browns. We add in browns almost every time that we mix it. And that's because, like we said, we struggle to keep that 3-to-1 ratio that we're really that we want to stay closer to. So as we get browns in, we're adding them in here to try to keep that going, and then that's part of the digestion pile as well. And then finished pile. So, or I should say our resting pile. This is our resting pile. That's our finished pile, which is very depleted at the moment. Been doing a lot of potting lately. But this is our resting pile. So as you can see, it's not completely broken down. You can still see a little bit of paper in there. You see some wood chips, things like that. So it's just gonna sit here and it's gonna really let the worms finish doing the work. So this pile is cool. It's not hot like the other ones are. So the worms are moving up in there. They're eating all the leftover material, the wood chips, the paper, any leftover little bit of fruit scraps that are in there. The reason why this is resting though, it doesn't have enough nitrogen in it to make it back up. So when we flipped it, it was cool. It didn't heat back up. The reason why they heat back up is because you introduced oxygen to it. And when you introduce that oxygen, that life really kickstarts again, and it starts to heat up all over again. The heating up is them just doing, their life processes, eating things, metabolizing, a lot of reproduction. Reproduction is the main thing that's going on. But yeah, when you add that oxygen, that's what really fuels it back up. So when we did that, we noticed it didn't happen, so it moved over here to resting, and then it goes from resting to finished. It's really just looking at it. It's looking at it and giving it a smell as well. You'll see that this stuff is just a lot more broken down. It'll look sort of like, when you buy a bag of soil from the store or something, it's very fine. There's not a whole lot of large pieces in it, anything like that. That's kind of how you will know. And like I said, we'll have some side-by-side comparisons of them, so you can really tell the difference. Yeah, let's get to replacement. So it is extremely simple. It's fine.
While he's unscrewing this, so you can see he's got these 4 clamps on here. Super easy. Just unscrew them. Yeah, put it back in. You can plan it so that you do it in between piles, when there's less activity. I'm going to show y'all the difference between the finished and the resting pile, because it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, and there's no finish left to show you. So this is from one of our pots. So we added these green ones. This is unscreened, completely finished compost. You can smell it too. And this is our resting pile, and you can see it's has a little more moisture in it. Even though we didn't add any water to either one of these, and it just rained a couple days ago, but this is still have a little bit of moisture from decomposing things. It's a little more crumbly, not as fine. Here, I'll pass this around to smell too. They smell good. It should smell like a riverbank, And this is our screen compost. So yeah, we screen for the top couple inches of our beds. We take this, and this fits directly on top of our jump cart. But you don't even need something like this complicated if you want to screen it. You could just get an old colander strainer or something, or just part of this 1/4-inch fencing. 1/4-inch fencing's good for it makes it a little faster, but you don't need to build a whole contraption for it. Just makes it easier to go off of. But this is our screen compost. It's a little dry right now, but yeah, you can also.
To kind of ensure that your compost is biologically complete. This is something like if you're doing any research online or stuff, you'll hear a lot of people's colleges and things like that talk about biologically complete soil and compost, and that is key to doing that, is making sure that all of that stuff gets through your compost.
And that's why we also like to add things like oyster shells and eggshells to the compost. They take a while to break down, but they'll add calcium and other minerals to your soil, which are also super important. The big nutrients are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but you also need magnesium and calcium and selenium, all sorts of silicon.
Boron, all types of stuff. But another really good thing about the oyster shells and clam shells they have all those little holes and ridges and stuff like that, and like it gets really nerdy, but that is more surface area, and the more surface area you have, the more bacteria and microbes you can grow. So having things that have all of these little holes and cracks and things like that, these are have layers in them. That's really good because that's just more homes for your microbes and all
More
these
of
little
a
buddies.
permanent home, and then yeah.
Yep. And
Kind of inoculates every soil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So you'll see oyster shells all over our farm. They're in our beds. They're in compost. They're everywhere. I even use them as weights in my compost tea to hold down my hose because they're just very, very useful. And like you said, they can help you inoculate your different spaces.
Are your residents pretty educated on the brand?
We have a sign. We do have a sign.
All right.
Compost Now, who we're partnered with to start up the compost program, they also have materials out there. But for the most part, people bring us good stuff. Occasionally, I have to, dig out some red beans and rice or some jambalaya or even like some pasta or salad. Even that, you get a lot of that salad that already has salad dressing on it. I'm like, dang.
Got Q-tips sometimes.
Yeah, you get random stuff, and we just have to take it out, Yeah, we have to just, take it out. Get some gloves, take it out, or get a shovel and scoop that part out, and then use the rest. So it happens. But for the most part, I would say probably 80% of our stuff is good to go.
Yes.
And do you want to talk about Zots?
Oh, yeah. So we mentioned coffee grinds earlier. Coffee grinds are a really good thing for your compost. They are really easy to get. Most of these coffee shops are just getting rid of their stuff. We partnered with Zots. They're on Oak Street, and we pick up their coffee grinds and tea stuff. Every Tuesday is a big old, I'll get that wrong, but like little tea bags and stuff like this. All this stuff breaks down over time. It's just, I think it's hibiscus tea in there. And then, we brought them some buckets. We brought them 5-gallon buckets, and they fill them up, and they text us, say, hey, they're full. And we bring them, empty them out, bring them back to them, and that helps us out a lot. Because coffee grounds are kind of weird. They're kind of like a green brown. They're in between, but they are very, very helpful. Especially if you're doing things like that's true. Yeah. It depends on how old they are, and if you brew them. You never want to use like expired coffee. Like if someone were to give you like, oh, this bag of Folgers is old, don't use it. You need to brew it first because it's so acidic. It will really mess with the pH of your soil, and it will likely kill a lot of life in your soil. It will kill your worms, things like that. It's very acidic. So if you're gonna use it, run it through some water to kind of get that pH level that acidity out of there. But besides that, if you're going from like, we partnered with Cherry Coffee at one point. They were down the street, but they're not here anymore. So if you have a coffee shop near you, see if they'll give you their coffee ground. Another really good substrate to add in, and we'll kind of talk about this a little bit with Johnson soup, mushrooms. So if you know anyone who grows mushrooms, ask them for their spent blocks and their mushroom spawn. That stuff is absolutely amazing.
Also, another little known thing, flowers. Michael told me about this the other day. Flowers have a lot of phosphorus in them. So
Wiring, so this is like, you can use like paddle panel. This, they call it a remesh for like using concrete, hardware mesh, but you don't want to use something like chicken wire. Chicken wire is a little too flimsy. You want something that's more sturdy. So this is, I believe, 10 gauge. This is 14 gauge. But you want at least 10 gauge wire. That's like the sturdiness and the thickness of it. I got this from Lowe's. This whole roll was $60, but you don't need this whole roll. I could probably make like 3 or 4 out of this roll right here. And they also sell smaller sizes as well. And then you need something to tie the metal together. So I have some fixed tie straps. You can also use wire if you have that laying around. You can use zip ties. You need something to cut the wire fencing. So I just have some wire clippers. You need some agricultural fabric. So if you have the plastic, you can use that too, but I would recommend using the fabric because it's less than the plastic I find. And then what you're going to do with that is you're going to essentially build yourself a cylinder. You're going to tie it together, and this will be lining that cylinder so none of your waste falls out. And then you're going to have some PVC. You have some PVC laying over here. You'll have PVC pipes going directly into the top of the compost pile with holes drilled in them. And that way the air is able to vent through and also moisture is able to leach out. So your moisture is going to go down and oxygen is going to be able to flow through. You'll let it sit like that for, I also have a level here. That you want this to be level because it will be heavy. You don't want it to be tilting anyway, because if you have it tilting, it will likely fall over at some point. You don't want to do that. So you build the cylinder, you line it with the agricultural fabric, and then you begin to fill it up. Or you put your PVC pipes in place, and then you begin to fill it up. You want to put your PVC pipes in place before you fill it because you want the compost to mold around the PVC. You're going to leave everything like that for about a week or so, and then you're going to take the PVC pipes out. When you take the PVC pipes out, you'll be left with holes. You should have 5 holes inside of your reactor, and then you just let it go. You just let it sit, and you let it sit for a few months, and after that, you have some finished compost. Most of the time, Johnson Sioux is used for, it is a static way of doing compost. That means you don't have to really be active with it. You don't have to flip it. All you have to do is make sure that it stays moist. So you can hand water it yourself, or you can set up an irrigation system on a timer, whatever you want to do. All you have to do is make sure that it stays moist. But it's generally used for more fungal dominated compost. And so it's a lot of wood chips, a lot of mushroom blocks, lots of leaves, things like that. Not so much your food scraps. If you are going to do it with food scraps, like a more traditional composting, one of the key things you have to do is make sure that you dry it out. Because when you do the lasagna layer method and you do Johnson Sioux, because you're not able to turn it, there will be pockets of moisture in there that aren't drying out, and so no oxygen can move through there. So that's why it's important to make sure if you're going to add any food scraps, you want to dry those food scraps out so they're not sopping wet like that. And yeah, that's generally it. It's a very cheap way to get a compost set up, and it's a lot less work. So there's no flipping. The work is all in the very beginning, and then that's it. And then you harvest your stuff later on. You might be asking, why do I want fungal dominated soil? Well, some plants prefer fungal dominated soil, and some prefer bacteria dominated soil. So that could be a way for you to cater to your plants. Or it could just be a way for you to sort of boost up your soil around your farm, adding more fungus to your soil, so you have that good fungal network like we were talking about to help make nutrients and things like that get better transferred to your plants.
I worked at a place where they did a very simplified version of this, mostly for practicality for a big operation. As they were weeding, they just had rolls with rolls of the wire, like cylinders, and as they weeded throughout the year, they would just throw the weeds in there and let them sit until they were decomposed. So it kind of helps them not have to cart all of their disposed plant stuff somewhere else. But they never added food scraps to it. It was mostly dried greens and just whatever they had. So that's less precise in what you're getting out of it, but more practical if you have a big.
Yeah, so static piles, another static pile that you can do is just your traditional kind of on the ground pile where you just pile your stuff up. They also sell like these bins that you can put in your garden, just throw your stuff in there, put the pile back on, and just let it sit and break down over time. The idea with those are that you're not going to keep the temperature up, you're just kind of letting all of the microbes and the orthopods and all the things that love to break down dead stuff, you're just letting them kind of go in there and do their thing and turn it into soil slowly over time.
That will take several years.
It does. It takes a very long time. I had one growing up, and you barely got out of it. You only got that bottom part, really. That was where they had filling. You just flip it over and then take it to the next summer essentially to use it. Compost tumblers, very, very popular. We are not big. Most of these you just flip it around, and they have ones that have a crank on them, but this is doing all of your aeration and flipping. And then when you're done, a good part of it, a lot of times flipping it over and letting it come out. These come in a variety of models. You can also build one yourself. The reason why we're not fans of these is they take forever. They take a very long time. I believe it's because they don't have that chemical effect. A lot of it works. But I don't know exactly why they don't work well. But they have these. And then another one that we don't have to show you are the tabletop composters. Those make compost in a very different way. They grind up their food scraps and things like that, and they kind of make it, it's not the same compost. It's not as biologically complete because again, you're not getting the soil life and things like that to go up in it. But it is it's a decent option for someone who doesn't really have space to compost or wants to make sure that they're using their food waste responsibly. They are pretty expensive.
You probably add that to your
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would use it as like a supplement with some compost and iron packets and things like that. I think we covered everything.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions?